In high school, I ghost-wrote every paper for the most popular kid in school. He failed upward into wealth. Now he's found me and he wants to pay me back in a way I never saw coming. My name is Priya. I'm 34 years old. I work as a data analyst for a nonprofit in Chicago, which sounds more dignified than it pays. I have a studio apartment, 3 succulents that are somehow still alive, and a student loan balance that I've made my peace with the way you make peace with a chronic condition. You don't fix it, you just manage it. I want to tell you about Tyler Walsh. In 2005, I was a freshman at a high school in the suburbs of Cincinnati. New school, new city, my family had just moved from out of state, and I knew exactly no one. I was the kind of teenager who dealt with social anxiety by being academically perfect. While other kids were at football games, I was at home reading ahead in the textbooks. I wasn't miserable, exactly. I just existed in a different orbit than most of my classmates. Tyler Walsh was as close to royalty as a public high school gets. Quarterback, though not particularly talented. Son of the most prominent contractor in the county. Friends with everyone, dismissed by no one, invited to everything. The kind of person whose absence from a party people would notice and whose presence made other people feel chosen. We ended up in the same sophomore English class. The teacher assigned a paper in the first week, 5 pages on a theme from To Kill a Mockingbird. Tyler sat next to me because alphabetical seating put us together, and in a moment I did not fully think through, he leaned over and asked if I could help him with it. I said yes. I don't remember exactly why. Maybe I wanted to be useful to someone. Maybe I wanted to be someone worth talking to. Maybe I was just a 15-year-old who didn't think past the moment. I wrote the paper. He got a B+. He thanked me with an enthusiasm that was genuinely warm and not at all proportionate to what I'd done. And then, almost without either of us formally deciding it, it became a system. For the next 4 years, all of high school, I wrote Tyler Walsh's English papers, then history papers, then a philosophy elective he took junior year, then his college application essays. I wrote the essay that got him into Ohio State, where his father was a major donor, which probably mattered more than the essay, but still. In exchange, Tyler did not publicly acknowledge that I existed, which was not an arrangement we discussed explicitly. It was just the natural shape of things. He would nod at me in the hallway. He would occasionally tell me I was smart in a way that felt genuine but also slightly bewildered, like he found the concept of my intelligence exotic. He once saved me a seat in the cafeteria when I had nowhere to sit, and I thought about that for longer than was healthy. I went to a state school on partial scholarship, studied statistics, graduated in 4 years with honors and a loan balance that has been my companion ever since. Tyler went to Ohio State, where I assume he majored in something comfortable, graduated, and walked into his father's construction company, which by that point had become a regional development firm with contracts across 4 states. I knew vaguely from social media that he'd done well. I didn't follow him. I occasionally saw his name come up when mutual acquaintances tagged something, the way people from high school drift through your peripheral vision online without really entering your life. 5 weeks ago, I got a LinkedIn message. It started, "Priya, I know this is coming out of nowhere, and I completely understand if you don't want to engage with it." It was from Tyler. He said he'd been thinking about me for a long time. He said he'd been doing what he called an accounting of things in his life that he hadn't handled well, and that I was near the top of that list. He said he'd looked me up several times over the years and talked himself out of reaching out because he didn't know what to say. He said he wanted me to know that those papers had mattered more than I probably realized. Not because they kept him from failing, though they did, but because he'd actually read them. Every one. He said reading my writing had been the first time he understood that ideas could be interesting, that language could do things beyond basic communication. He said I had taught him how to think about thinking, and that he'd been using that in ways that had shaped his career and his life, and that he had never said thank you in any way that was proportionate to what I'd given him. And then he said he'd like to, if I was open to it, say thank you properly. I read the message 3 times. Then I closed LinkedIn and went for a walk around the block because I needed to do something with my body while my brain processed it. Here is what I want to be honest about. My first emotion was not warm. My first emotion was something that felt a lot like anger, or maybe a complicated cousin of anger. Because Tyler Walsh had a great life partly on the back of work I did. While I was writing his essays, I was also writing my own. I graduated with a degree that I was proud of and a debt load that has followed me through every major life decision. He graduated, walked into a company, and has spent the last 12 years building on a foundation that his family laid, and that I, in some small way, also helped construct. A thank you note on LinkedIn does not exactly balance that ledger. But I also knew that I had made the choice to help him, every time. He never coerced me. He never threatened me. I had said yes for 4 years because some part of me wanted to, for reasons that were probably more about me and my own needs at 15 than they were about him. I wrote back. I said I appreciated the message and that I was open to hearing what he had in mind. What he had in mind was a phone call, and then a longer conversation, and then a proposal that I have now spent 2 weeks sitting with. Tyler's company does development and construction consulting. He said he'd been quietly restructuring his philanthropy and wanted to establish a mentorship fund for first-generation college students going into STEM fields. He wanted to name it after me, use my name, my story, as the founding narrative. He wanted to fund my position at my nonprofit for 3 years so I could focus entirely on the program components I'd been trying to build without the funding to do it. He wanted to do it without announcement or press, just quietly, just as a thing that corrected an old imbalance in the only way he knew how to correct it now. I have not said yes. I have not said no. I've been asking myself what I actually want from this, whether the offer is genuine or whether it's Tyler Walsh buying absolution with money he has plenty of, and I have none of. Whether I'm being too cynical about a person who is trying to do something decent. Whether there's a version of this where I can take the thing that would genuinely help me build the work I care about without feeling like I'm letting him off a hook. I might not even have the right to hold him on. I don't know yet, I'm still thinking. But I wanted to tell the story because it felt like it belonged somewhere other than just inside my own head. Because the 15-year-old girl who wrote those papers in her bedroom while Tyler was at parties deserved for someone to know what she did, and what it cost her, and what it might be worth, 20 years later, to a person who is only just now able to say what it was worth to him. I've been asked by a few people who know pieces of this story whether I'm going to say yes to Tyler's offer. I've been thinking about that question for weeks now, and I keep arriving at the same uncomfortable realization. I don't know how much of my hesitation is principle and how much of it is pride. The principal argument is this: money doesn't balance an ethical ledger that was never properly closed. I did work for someone who benefited from it without acknowledgement for 20 years. An endowment, however generous, is a transaction that lets him feel absolved without actually undoing anything. Taking it might mean accepting his terms for what the resolution looks like, rather than setting my own. The pride argument is simpler. I got here on my own. My career, my skills, my work, none of it was handed to me. Accepting a major financial gesture from Tyler Walsh would mean allowing him to be part of my story in a way that he hasn't earned. But then I think about the mentorship program, the students it would reach, the work I've been trying to build for years without the resources to build it properly. And I think about the 15-year-old girl who wrote those papers in her bedroom, who was good at something and was never in a position to fully claim that goodness publicly, and whether she would tell the 34-year-old woman to set the pride down and take the thing that would let her do the most good. I think she might. I haven't decided, but I think she might.